Hi everyone, it's Andy. Today I'm going to be showing you how to remove the leg shells from an ERS-111. Apologies if I sound a little cruddy today. I am getting over a cold, so In any case, let's go ahead and get started. One thing to note with all the legs on the 111 is they're all pretty much mirrors of each other, so if you know how to do one, you know how to do the rest of them. So with that being said, we're going to do this front one here today. So the first thing we want to remove is this little shoulder cap over here, and you'll see there is a screw hole under here. This one's already unscrewed, but what you'll want to do is gently pry these sides and then just flip it up, unscrew it, and it'll pop right off. No big deal. Next, we're going to move our attention to the lower leg. So we're going to start with this one little screw right here, and naturally you want to be using a JIS tip or screwdriver. And for the two leg shells on the bottom, this one is the smaller screw. Go ahead and plop that to the side. Now you can go ahead and start removing this rear shell. Now the way these are tabbed in is there's kind of a clip and you slide upward to get it out. However, they're a little tricky after being stuck on there for 20 plus years. So I like to take a plastic pry tool, just gently work it around the edges to unclip things. And do be careful because this plastic does like to get brittle after sitting for however many years. Alright, now that I've got that leg shell off, I can show you how the clip works in it. So there's this little black tab right there, and then the clip on the leg shell slides into it like so. Go ahead and put this guy to the side now, and move our attention to the front leg shell. So we're just going to want to take our screwdriver and undo this screw right here. And these ones do like to get tight over time, so you might have to use a little bit of pressure and make sure you don't skip that screw. This one is quite a bit longer, so just make sure you're sorting your screws. Now to remove the front leg shell, you basically just kind of gently pull, and then it should pull straight away. You can kind of see right here and here, these little lifted pieces of plastic are what we're trying to clear. And there's that guy. So now we have the first bits of the shell off, and now we're going to go ahead and move to the upper leg here. Alrighty, so getting started on the upper leg, we have this screw here. Again, probably a little tight, so you might need to use some pressure. And this is actually the same length as that longer screw that we pulled just a minute ago for the lower leg, so you can leave that right next to him. And then flip to the bottom of the leg here. Another screw here. These ones generally aren't all that tight. Undo that little guy. And this little one is the same length as the other little one we just pulled out of the lower, so set it right over there. Now we can go ahead and pull this shell off. You may want to take a little thin plastic pry tool, poke it into the crease, and it should pop right off. Alright, so with the leg shells removed now, I'm going to go ahead and pull the entire leg from the body assembly. So to remove the rest of the leg from the rest of the body, all we have to do is remove this little plug right here. And you'll see it's covered in this disgusting foam. This stuff is pretty much just going to disintegrate when you touch it. But go ahead and remove that nasty foam. Naturally, be careful of the flexis. And then just gently grab by the harness. Ease it side to side slowly, be careful, and pop it right out. Alright, now that we've got that disconnected, go ahead and extend the leg like so. We're going to go ahead and put this cable to the side. Now with that out of the way, we can see these two screws. These two are gold colored. So go ahead and remove these. These are probably going to be a little tight as they're what's holding the leg to the rest of the body assembly. There's one. there is 2. And with those out, you can just go ahead and gently pull away from the body. And there's a little hip gear and where it inserts. And now you have the leg completely removed from the body. And the one last thing you'll want to do if you're completely deshelling is to remove the little paw. So just take a thin tool, gently pry up. Do the same for the other end. Gently pry up. And note that this spring right here is going to be sitting in this little hole. But other than that, once you got that guy out, you have got a deshelled 111 leg. Alright, so now that we're done with the leg and the leg shells, we're going to go ahead and move to the hip, shoulder, or body, whatever you'd like to call it. So to start, we remove 1, 2, 3, and 4 of these silver screws. And all these little guys are the same length, so just keep them all in the same space. Apologies for Gamma just blurting out. I'm sure you've heard him say a few things throughout this video. Alright, with those 4 screws off, the body shell will slide straight off. And just make sure to fish this plug through. Put that to the side. And this is our body gearbox. Pretty condensed little thing compared to how big these shells are. In any case, we're going to go ahead and start on the gearboxes now. Alright, first things first, I just want to make note of this over here. So you'll see this cable going through the hip gear as well as this little bearing. And I like to make sure that it goes generally in its same position when I reassemble everything. So I just like to take a Sharpie and kind of mark it where it's coming out of that little bearing. But after that, we can go ahead and start pulling the screws to access the gearbox. Now, these gearboxes do like to get pretty brittle over time, so when you're reassembling everything, making sure it's nice and tight, do it snug, not tight. These little guys really like to crack, and because this is a parts guide, let me see if I can give you an example. I'm not sure how well it shows up, but just tightening this a little too much caused that little crack right there. So just be very careful when you're undoing these and redoing them. Don't want to put too much force on them and destroy the gearbox mounts. In any case, 1 screw up here. Then we have screw number 2 right here. And screw number 3 right here. And with those out of the way, I like to take a little plastic pry tool, gently insert it down here where the bearing is, because that's usually where there's the most tension, and then just pull up. Gently wiggle it, and you'll want to kind of put this plug horizontally to get it through that bearing. Alright, now that we got the gearbox cover off, I can actually show you the internals of this guy. So first we got the joint gear or hip gear. This guy is just pressed into the potentiometer, so you can just gently wiggle him back and forth to get him out. You can see underneath there's the potentiometer, and this guy is keyed, so you're not going to have to worry about rehoming or repositioning anything when you install it all back in. We have this gear attached to the drive motor. These guys in particular like to get pretty brittle, so do be careful when you're brushing or cleaning these guys. This gear over here. And then this gear right here. Oops. And that's a general look at the gearbox, but generally for cleaning, just brush them out, apply a little bit of new lube, and you should be good. If you're still getting noise, you'll probably want to remove the motor, which is this screw, and then this little red and black wire here. But that guy is pretty easy to remove as well. Alright, with the hip gearbox out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the actual leg. And these two sides are more or less exactly the same. Only thing you really have to do is disconnect this little joint piece here to separate the two, and that'll allow you to get at all the gears for cleaning. So, first thing I like to do is remove this little plug going into the lower leg board. And again, there's that nasty gross foam. It'll probably just disintegrate when you touch it. And then, 2 gold screws over here, and these are what are holding the joint into the actual leg joint, or leg. So we're just going to go ahead and undo these. And with those out of the way, it'll just kind of pop out. And you can go ahead and undo this plug up here to remove it completely. And now we have a single leg gearbox. Alright, now that we got our leg gearboxes separated from each other, the first thing we're going to want to do is remove this potentiometer. You can leave it in place, but when you leave it in place, it stays attached to this other side of the gearbox cover, and it's kind of dangling, and you don't really want that on a flexi, so I like to just go ahead and remove it. Depending on how old and crappy the adhesive is, you may just be able to pull it out like I am doing here. But otherwise, you'll probably want to add a little drop of isopropyl alcohol just to loosen up that adhesive. This one I've taken out before, so it's already a little bit broken. Alright, so with that potentiometer off, just unstick it from the rest of the housing and be very mindful of it when you're taking everything apart. But with that out of the way, we can go ahead and remove these 4 screws here. Start with this one. And these are all the same except for this one I'm doing right now. This one is very long. So there's that one long screw. And the rest of the 3 are the exact same length. Alright, with those 3 out, we can go ahead and remove this top gearbox cover. So just go ahead and take a thin plastic pry tool, or just your fingers really. Separate it a little bit. A little more. And just pop that cover off. And you'll see it grab to the axle with that. It's not a big deal. Let's go ahead and pull this out. Rearrange everything. Get this gear out. Pop this in. And reinstall everything the way it was. And this is what the internals of a 111 gearbox look like. So it's very similar to the hip gearbox. Got this one gear attached to the motor. This guy likes to get brittle, like so. Again, be careful with that. Intermediary, joint gear, and then this guy here. And same method as the hip, just use a brush them out. A little isopropyl alcohol doesn't hurt. And then go ahead and lube them with your lube of choice. The upper gearbox is more or less the exact same, so I just went ahead and sped through it here. And that should pretty much cover removing the shells and accessing the gearboxes for this guy. The procedure is exactly the same for the rear leg, more or less. If anything, the lower leg shell is probably a little easier to remove, doesn't fight you quite as much. But here is a look at everything now that we're all finished up. Have all the shells and their associated screws, and the gearboxes and their associated screws. Those gold ones in between both gearboxes are for attaching the two, and these ones over here for attaching the leg to the hip. So yeah, that should pretty much cover it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below, but until next time.